Hello, welcome to Culture Vultures, the show where we talk about, well, whatever it is we're talking about this week. I'm Marcus,
I'm Weston.
I'm Luke.
and today we're talking about Mal Querer, which is an album by Rosalia that I submitted for listening this week, and my two companions were so kind as to forget until right before we were supposed to record. So
It's good. It's fresh in our
we'll see
minds,
how
man.
this
Exactly. See, it's first thoughts, which is even better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see, because I definitely my enjoyment of this album went like way higher after like the second and third listen. But
Who has time to form opinions?
So, first impressions, I guess.
Yeah, were we gonna do track by track, or
I think just general impression of the album first.
because I have like track by track too.
Wow. Well, I definitely don't have that.
Do you have a body pillow of Rosalia?
Rosalia, no,
Rosalia, whatever.
I didn't really listen to her that much until this week. I was like, whoa, this is actually way better than I thought.
I was not expecting this, I'm gonna be honest. I was expecting just Latin pop, but pleasantly surprised, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting this from Marcus, just because like normally like the more experimental stuff, at least from what I remember of like our days of Music League and stuff, like he just really didn't like all of this stuff that at least I liked. So it was kind of weird to see something that was like a bit more experimental from him.
I'd say most of my music I listen to is way more experimental than this. I listen to very little. I'm very picky when it comes to pop music.
You're very picky when it comes to music in general.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. I'd say I don't listen to a lot of indie music, is what I'd say. Like the indie music I listen to is like indie music from the 80s that isn't really indie music because it's really popular nowadays because it has a
Yeah.
cult following. But
So
anyway, yeah.
anyway, initial thoughts,
Do we want to
Weston,
like
take it away.
describe the album so people aren't completely lost as to what we're
It's
talking about?
No.
it's like flamenco music and like very electronic, lots of synthesizers,
Yeah.
lots of auto-tune.
It's like a flamenco
Um,
album. Here's how I describe it. It's like a flamenco album, but produced by Kanye West.
Yeah, I definitely got that vibe too, especially with the first track. And I actually, here's what I was gonna say is I was super excited with the first track because I did feel that kind of like modern American electronic scene, like with like Kanye, but it didn't really feel that way for the rest of the track. Some of the songs were definitely like that, but towards the end, for me, it kind of just like fell off. But I definitely felt that with a lot of the tracks,
Yeah,
especially
I
the first
agree.
one.
I felt like this album, it's not exactly that it was disjointed, but it felt like it didn't really know what it wanted to be because there were so many different things in it. And like it did a fairly good job, I would say, of still staying pretty much coherent despite that, but it still just felt like track to track was either completely different or like exactly the same for like a couple of the tracks that just blended together that were basically just her kind of singing and then
That
not
was
much
my
else.
that's my problem as well. Is it was a lot of the same, which is which was a cool vibe, but not. I feel something that I would not listen to a lot because it's hard to follow. It's complex melodies a lot of the times, and it's just the tracks blend into each other. Maybe
Yeah,
it
I think
requires some more listens, but
I'd say what you
yeah,
guys are expressing is exactly the sentiment I got like the first time I listened to this.
yeah, this is something that I could see myself re-listening to, but it's for choice songs and not the whole album. I also kind of hated how like wavy, I guess you could say, like her singing was.
That's something I had to get used to. There were a lot of things that were like I was like, "Okay, I see what they're doing, that's cool." But then on the re-listen, like, the melody just like, something clicks when you listen to this
hmm.
album a few times. That's what I'll say is, like, something clicked for me with this album, and now, like, every song is really
Yeah,
good.
see, for me, I honestly don't think that will ever happen because like the thing is like the kind of like waviness and melody, as Marcus was saying, is like really like it makes me think of like Arabic music or Indian music. And like that's stuff that I like,
That's true.
but it's just so weird to hear it in like very heavily Spanish inspired music. And it just kind of threw me off the whole time because I was like, it just feels wrong because it didn't seem like it blended the Indian style with the Spanish style very well.
Well,
Because I would say
it's
it's
the
more Indian
flamenco
than Arabic.
style. That's all
Yeah,
flamenco.
flamenco. Yeah, but like it didn't blend well for me. Like it just felt like two distinct things that were shoved together. At least for the more disappointing tracks. For the really good tracks, it just hit perfectly. But for like overall, I would say like it just didn't blend together well enough for me to really be like, yeah, I love it because like I'm not a huge fan of the waviness, but like it has to be in something that like is culturally like that's the standard in the culture or some sort of a blending where they take that into account and they have a passion for that culture. And this just felt like she was kind of like, hey, you know what? I've heard people sing like this, so I'm going to sing like that. And like, I don't think that's what it really is,
I've
but for me, that's just what it felt like.
Yeah, having listened to a lot of Rosalia, I can tell you that's like really wrong. Like she's a trained um flamenco singer from the age of 16 and she went to school and everything. And that's how they sing. And she released like a
Yeah.
whole album of like straight just flamenco before this. So
See, like, I've
Mhm.
listened to a
that's part of the
little
style, I
bit of
think.
flamenco, and like, I've really enjoyed that, but it doesn't like feel quite the same to me. Like,
It's
probably if I
very
was more
inaccessible.
educated.
It's a bit grating at first until you kind of get used to it. It's not the most grating vocal style, but if you're not used to it, like the first few times I was like, okay, but then as you get used to it, it really grows on you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say exactly that it's even grating at all. I would say more so it's just kind of like almost uncomfortable to me. And like, there have been people that like because like our one church had a lady that sung like the like weird kind of waviness unintentionally, and it was just horrible. So it just makes me think of that, and I'm just like, we called her the fan lady too because she would always rotate away from the mic, so sometimes she was louder and sometimes she was quieter. It was funny, and it just kind of makes me think of that, and like it didn't really do it for me except for the tracks where they added some of the stuff like they did like the rain in, let's see here, what was it, let's see, yeah, track 9. So track 9 had like the rain and then it had like some other little stuff on it that was kind of like
It's the
more
very
ambient, and like I
Amy
thought it
Blake
worked.
inspired
Yeah, I
one.
thought it worked really really well with her voice. And then there was the one that was like super poppy, track 7, I think it was. Yeah, track 7, I felt
Oh,
like
the
it
one
worked
that
really.
rips off Justin Timberlake.
Probably, yeah, I think so.
It has the melody from Cry Me a River in the intro.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
I was
um
wondering if you'd catch that.
well, I have like hardly listened to anything from him.
Me neither, but um, reading about that came up and was like, oh, that's true.
Yeah, yeah,
I
because
like
I've
this a lot better
listened.
than that song, but
Yeah, like I thought track 7 was pretty dang good. Like I think that was probably my favorite, but
that's
like I
one of the
felt like,
more immediately accessible ones in my opinion. But yeah, it's really good.
yeah, it reminded me of a lot of bands that I like. Like it kind of reminded me a little bit of like some of the stuff that Kimbra's done, and then like the beat kind of reminded me of like the Kite String Tangle. And it was definitely more poppy than the rest of the album, and like I like that. I'm not like Marcus will say otherwise, but I'm not exactly like a mainstream pop person. Well, I'm not really a pop person in general, which is what Marcus would disagree with, but specifically mainstream pop, which is a little bit more was, but like I still enjoyed it because it reminds me of other like indie pop bands that I like.
The weird thing is like there's a ton of reggaeton in this
Mhm.
album.
Yes, specifically track 8 was one that I caught it. It was more chill than most of the reggaeton that I've listened to, but I actually really liked track 8 just because it reminds me of some of the stuff and like it reminds me of like an old friend, so it was like kind of nostalgic.
Yeah, even just a lot of the vocal styling throughout is it reminds me of reggaeton through and through. And at first it's like grating because it's like I have a negative reaction to reggaeton like anyone else who has been
Yes.
immersed in reggaeton. But the way they use it is so much better. And it's like if reggaeton could, they could actually do something good with reggaeton.
It was kind of funny because I was thinking that throughout, and then I finished the album and I was listening to it on Spotify, and sometimes they'll bring up like other songs by the artist once you actually finish a playlist. And the very first song that it brought up was one that she did with Travis Scott that was like full on reggaeton, and I was like, oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense
she's
for
got a
her.
lot of she's had a lot of like crossover hits recently with reggaeton stars and with some American pop stars as well. She's gotten like
Hmm.
really big, which is really
Yeah.
weird because this album, I feel like this album is a flamenco album with pop production, which I was expecting going into it to be a pop album with flamenco production or flamenco elements. But some of these songs are actually like some of them are actual traditional flamenco melodies and flamenco structures, like through
Hmm.
and through.
See, I felt like it was more like I definitely agree with that, but I felt like it had so many different things to it because I felt like flamenco, I felt like reggaeton, I felt like pop. I felt like she tried to do some like kind of more ambient styles, and I also felt like some noise music here and there, and like it just seemed like certain parts hit really, 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 really well, and then other parts were just either mediocre, or just like I want this to be over. I want to listen to the next song because like I know that she can do better, but this song in particular is bad because like it just it was such a weird thing because like track to track is either completely different or like feels almost exactly the same, which is very weird and unusual.
It probably helps too to kind of know the story between each of the because that's another thing we should mention is that this is a concept album, as you can probably see from the track titles, chapter 1,
Hmm.
chapter 2, chapter 3. Story of basically just an abusive relationship. But when you know what each of the chapters mean and what is actually being said, it it comes together a little bit more coherently, I would say.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna also comment on at some point. I feel like this would like I feel like instead of me being like kind of like eh towards it, like I liked it, but like this not being like my favorite album, I felt like if I could understand what was being sung, that I would have loved it. Because for me, not speaking Spanish and hearing almost entirely vocal driven tracks was just like there's nothing here, because I couldn't understand the lyrics. So I didn't get the story. I feel like I just missed half the album. That it's something that I would enjoy a lot if I could understand it. Like enjoy a lot more.
Let me ask Weston if he understood the lyrics.
Most of the time, I will be
I
honest,
could
I
not.
don't listen to it most. I didn't listen to it for the lyrics, but some of the songs I could understand.
I could make out some lyrics, but that Spanish accent is like it's impenetrable to me. I cannot.
Really?
Yeah. I had to look up the lyrics in English and read them, which they're pretty simple usually.
I mean, if you listen to it through Spotify, at least I have premium, so it might be a premium feature. But when you're listening to songs now, they actually give you the lyrics for almost every single song. So I was able to like, I didn't understand it obviously because I don't speak Spanish, but I was like looking at the lyrics, and like the whole time I was just like, man, I wish I knew what this meant.
I don't think
Because
my
I
Spotify has that feature. I do have premium, but I guess the
you might need to
desktop
update
doesn't
it.
have that.
I'm on the phone though.
Yeah, I think that's only a phone or a mobile feature.
Okay. Yeah, it used to be a thing that they did everywhere. And then they took it away, and then this is like a new version. And I think it's made entirely through Spotify because the other thing was powered by something else. It was like a plugin basically. But yeah, so like the whole time I was like, I really wish that I could understand this because like obviously it's Spanish, so I don't really understand it, but like, it's similar enough to English that I can pick out little bits in pieces of like the words and be like, oh, I think this means this. Like I mean the one is like concepcion or something like that. So I'm like, oh, that probably means conception.
Yeah.
So like I was just the whole time like, man, I want to understand this, and I know that if I looked up the lyrics, it wouldn't be the same like in English. It just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, it's a short listed, and there's I don't know what site I was looking at, but they were explaining the lyrics track by track in English.
Hmm.
That
So
really
was the
helped.
first song like super sexual? Like it gave off the vibes in the actual music, like the lyrics.
Probably. Um, I don't remember the first one, and I don't understand. I don't know what the word augurio means. The second one is wedding. The third one is jealousy. Fourth one is dispute. The fifth one is lament. I don't know what clausura means. The seventh one is liturgy, and eighth one is ecstasies. Is that
Ecstasy, probably.
ecstasy? I don't
Were you
know. It
wondering
doesn't
what
make sense.
augurio is, Marcus?
Yeah.
It's like a deseo. It's like a
Like a
wish.
what?
Desire.
Like a wish.
Oh, so yeah.
Yeah, like a wish or desire.
So in
You
other
have
words, I was very
conception.
likely
I don't
right.
know what cordura means, and then power at the end.
I have to say, like overall, I felt like the songs that didn't hit were just like either mediocre or just like a little bit bad. But track 4 was absolute hot garbage because it felt like she wanted to make a noise music song and then specifically also like an ambient song, which of course ambient is a subsect of noise, but like I'm talking like industrial kind of thing. And then she had no experience doing either, and she decided to wing it. And instead of doing two separate songs, she decided to jam them both together with no real thing, and then just did her usual singing over it. Because like that was the one with the cars, and it sounded so bad. Like it just sounded awful to me. Because like I feel like car sounds and like the cop car sounds and stuff can be used very well in music, but like this just was not it.
Which one was that? Which track?
Track
Track
4.
4, it's the one with the cars.
Oh, it's a motorcycle, actually. If you
Oh,
watch the video,
motorcycle.
I see that one more as a transition track, like an interlude and a build up, which is my big complaint with this is it feels like there's too much interlude, not enough. I feel like there's not enough meat in this album. It's
Yes,
missing
yeah.
one or two or three tracks like Malamente, like Di Mi Nombre, uh, just a few more
Or
hits.
even just honestly take the interlude songs and just layer one or two things on top of them and it'll sound so much better. Like the one track where they had like the rain, even though that one was still mostly the same styles as the more interlude like songs, the little bit of the rain and then like the second voice just made it like so much better. And like all of the interlude songs, I was just like, I just want this to be done because I can't understand it. So there's literally nothing here for me. But that one I really enjoyed just because it had an extra little layer or two. And like I feel like some of the songs are just missing the layering. And then when the songs do have the proper layering, they hit really well.
Yeah, I like track 4. I think it's pretty hype, but I think
Ugh.
that's one that I didn't like on first listen as well. It's very it's a bit grating, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't ever see myself liking that. Because like I think those sounds and stuff can be used very well, but like just in this case, it wasn't good. Sorry, Weston, what were you saying?
I was gonna say I did like track 4, and I really wish they had leaned into that style more in the rest of the track. Maybe not so strong, but that's what I was talking about in the beginning. Like Malamente in track 4 and a couple of the earlier tracks have that more synthetic electronic feel. but some of the rest of them just sound a little bit droning, and I wish they had leaned into that even more.
Yeah, they go for a more ambient,
Right.
melancholy sound at the later part of the album, which fits with the theme of what's going on.
Yeah,
Basically,
I
the
need to listen to
relationship
it again
together.
and listen for lyrics as well. But the first half of the track was definitely less forgettable, right? Rememberable. Yeah.
Memorable. English.
Anyways, so
This week on
yeah,
Weston is an idiot.
Weston. This week on Weston is an English teacher. Wait,
This week on Weston is a very bad English teacher.
so yeah, I wish more of the later tracks had that more electronic feel, or a little bit more poppy. Like I do like the flamenco, but I think I don't like pure flamenco. That's for sure. And some of the later tracks were kind of just droning, in my opinion. But I will listen to it again, I think, because I think I'll probably enjoy it a lot more the second time.
Yeah, I see myself honestly, like I'm not positive that I'll listen to it again just because this one will probably get saved and then lost somewhere in my whole massive playlists of songs and stuff. But I could see myself listening to this one again. Um like there were definitely songs that worked like really, really well that I really enjoyed that I would want to revisit. But I think it was kind of weird because I felt like at certain parts it just couldn't quite decide what it wanted to be though. And like maybe it's just because I was missing out on like some of the like cultural stuff or like, like the language, but like it just kind of seemed like
Yeah,
part of it was just it didn't know which way it wanted to lean and how far it wanted to lean into any of the, 50 things that it was trying to lean into.
I feel like it's just inaccessible enough to where even the parts that hit really hard, like, I wouldn't put them in a pop playlist. I wouldn't put Malamente. Like, I don't know if I could listen to that by itself as like a pop song.
Really?
Hmm.
I mean, even though it hits really hard on the album, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like that sort of experience,
Hmm.
especially with a lot of them kind of transitioning into each other and all that stuff. Being weird interludes in the middle of songs or stuff like that. Just doesn't work that well. I wanted to ask if either of you noticed the video game sample in one of the songs.
I did not. Which song
There's
was it?
literally a Legend of Zelda sound effects going on in one of them.
Oh, I think you know what? I think I did listen to that, and I was a little bit confused, and I was wondering if there was like another audio playing on my computer. Which track was that?
Track 10. Did you catch what I was saying, Luke?
Uh-uh.
There's a Legend of Zelda sample on one of the
Yeah.
tracks.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out because I couldn't figure out where it was from because it sounded super familiar, but I couldn't figure out where it was from. Yeah, I thought it felt like a little bit out of place with the rest of the song, but I felt like what it led into, like, because it was used like what 2 or 3 times, I think, at least like that kind of sound, like probably a different sample, but like I felt like it was a little bit out of place, but then like what it led into was good enough that it was excusable.
That's one where it really benefits from knowing what the song is about because it's basically talking about being wounded and bleeding and stuff like that. So that's why
Yeah.
there's the sword sound effect and wound sound effect and stuff.
See, I
But
actually thought it was probably more so like her like standing up to someone or something like that, like fighting someone.
yeah, I think that one's more of being wounded and looking back at the relationship, and then the next one is about standing up for herself,
Okay.
about power, if I remember correctly.
That would make sense. A ningún nombre.
Yeah, I thought yeah, but that's kind of like another one of the things that like I was talking about though where like it didn't feel exactly like it knew what it wanted to be like with adding that sample in because like that's something you would hear more so in like either like rap or some sort of like not exactly dubstep but like a lot more like heavily electronic or like something that's like really experimental or like some kind of like a nostalgic pop thing
It's
and
definitely very
like
hip hop influenced.
Yeah, and it just kind of felt out of place with the rest of the song, and it was just like I felt like that throughout a whole lot of the album. I was like, oh well, I can like trace where this came from, or like this sounds similar to such and
Well, you
so,
have
but
that
it just
you
feels
have that
out of
building
place.
synth sample as well on that song,
Yeah,
so I
but
don't
like
think
it
it's
just
out of place.
it just felt like it was like should have been in a different song. And like to me that sample specifically felt really more like it should have been almost kind of like an experimental thing. Because I don't think it would fit exactly well with what you typically think of with experimental, but it felt like it should be more in like an experimental song, like a more one. And it just all of this album felt like there were just so many different like genres and influences, but that it wasn't properly blended together to me. But I still really enjoyed it because those couple songs where it did blend together well was like amazing.
Which
And
songs are
like,
those, just out of curiosity?
let's see here.
We could say our favorite songs and probably wrap up.
I got quite a few. Track 9 I enjoyed. I'm going to be going backwards. I liked track 8. Track 7. I hated track 6 though, because that's the one where it's like just spoken word, and then like the little I can't remember what it is, but like the little like clicky thingies, like the circular clicky thingies, I think it is in the background. But for whatever reason, when like you're trying when you're if I wasn't focusing specifically on that sound, it just created like a wet sound in my hearing and ears, and it just sounded almost like someone stirring spaghetti, and it made me want to vomit because it felt like instead of just being a spoken word, the guy was like spitting all over me while he was speaking to me, and it was just uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think it's some old actress or something. I
Yeah,
don't really know who it is. It's got an old grainy sound. I do
yeah, and
like
then I
that
also
guitar sample in the beginning though,
yeah, and
but
then I also really liked track 1, and that's like my favorite tracks.
pretty solid picks. What about you, Wes?
Definitely Malamente is my favorite by far. I liked 7. I liked 3 from right. Just give me a second. Yeah, I liked
Yeah, me too.
3. I liked 1, 3, 7, probably my top ones. Any ones that like delve into the more poppy, more electronic stuff, I liked a lot more than the ambient flamenco, traditional flamenco.
Yeah, I'd say I still agree, although the other stuff really grew on me.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it will on me as well. I'll have to listen to it
yeah,
again.
yeah, like I really I think the pop stuff worked a heck of a lot better. But like I really like ambient music, like of pretty much any variety. And like certain tracks when it got ambient I really liked, and then certain ones I
You
just
both
didn't
liked
because
track 9, right?
yes. Yeah, I
It's
think
like
so.
the James Blake
Yeah.
sort of inspired one.
Yeah. Yeah, and like see that's kind of like why I didn't like the other ones as much, because it was pretty much just the voice. And like I mentioned that earlier, like track 9 they added like the rain and then like a second voice and like some other little things. And it was just a little bit more layered. And that one worked really, really well. But the other ones where it was like just her voice just didn't do it for me, partially because of like the waviness and partially just because I didn't understand the language. It's like I felt like those ones just needed to be layered a bit more, you know?
Yeah, I see that. Although I appreciate the rawness of some of the tracks to contrast with the very high production on other tracks.
Yeah, I could get behind that and I could agree with you if I spoke the language and understood the songs and like understood the actual like concept of the album more. But for me not really having that, it was just like the
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. It's a decent album. I wish there were a few more elements added to it. That's all I'll say. But pretty solid for me.
yeah, for me I'd say it was a
Mhm.
good album. But that overall some of the tracks were well, I would say that it was a good album, but it was like about half and half, but the good parts make up for the mediocre and bad parts.
7 out of 10.
All right. Well, We'll see you next time on Culture
Culture
Vultures.
Vultures.
Culture Vultures. Yeah.
Way to jump in there, Weston.
Signing out.
Right on cue.